Happening, folks. Welcome to the channel. Today I'm doing another seat of my pants reviews with a movie I have not yet seen. This is another one considered to be one of the worst movies ever made, and considering the franchise it comes from, that is saying a hell of a lot. I've seen most of the Friday the 13th movies. I like a lot of the earlier ones. I think the first one was brilliant. Today's movie was suggested by a friend of the channel who thinks the movie is too stupid for me to be able to make fun of it. I never thought of what I do in those terms before, and I suppose the idea intrigued me, and so here we are. And once again, as per my own rules, the only thing I know about the movie before I watch it is what's in the Wikipedia sidebar. 2001's Jason X is directed by Jim Isaac. Ooh, the late great Jim Isaac, I should say. For those of you unawares, Jim was a special effects guy who specialized in creature work, mostly, I think. He worked on movies like Gremlins and Return of the Jedi. This cast list is looking way too long for our purposes today, especially given I don't recognize any of the actors, but I will point out that Jason Voorhees is played by none other than Kane Hodder in this iteration of Friday the 13th. If you don't know already, Kane Hodder's been in horror movies since back in the mid-80s. He was in The Hills Have Eyes Part 2 and a couple of the House movies, and he's obviously played Jason a few times as well. Visiting a toxic Earth, a group of researchers find the cryogenically preserved bodies of a man and woman. However, when they decide to return with the specimens, unimaginable horror awaits them. I've already got a feeling this is going to be really good. Oh, and for those of you weirdos who've asked why I always wear hats in the videos, I get up very early in the morning. By the time I shoot these videos, it's literally the end of my day, like 15 or 16 hours later. So I'm not bald, I'm just lazy. Let's get to the movie. Well, we seem to be off to a good start. The opening credits are panning through hell and somebody's brain. They appear to be interwoven, which is a bold artistic statement. I wonder whose brain it is. The Crystal Lake Research Facility, huh? So did they build an entire facility around Jason Voorhees? Or did the smallest lakeside town in America just happen to have one right next door to the giant carpet slide ride in case some sort of catastrophic event transpired? Did Jason friggin' Voorhees just give the army kid stink eye like Forrest Gump? Ah, I forgot about this. Yeah, David Cronenberg. I remember reading. He's in this movie because Jim Isaac wanted to use some of Cronenberg's special effects crew to help him do a sequence in this movie, and Cronenberg agreed on the condition they cast him in the movie for whatever reason, and apparently he started rewriting the entire script like immediately as soon as he stepped onto the set, and like nobody was offended because he's David fucking Cronenberg, obviously. There you go, folks. If you didn't know that already, you know it now. And if you don't like pointless trivia, buckle yourselves in and forgive me ahead of time because it's the only kind I know. So Cronenberg's playing some kind of scientist who's come to take Jason to Scranton. And he thinks Jason's unique abilities to regenerate lost and damaged tissues warrants further research. That's as ridiculous as saying in American Werewolf in London, for example, that a doctor went, "That man transformed into a wolf last night. Perhaps we should study him scientifically." Aha, I was wondering about that, so cheeky army boy with the blanket's been Hannibal Lectered. So they're in a completely open 10,000 square foot facility with nothing in it apart from a bit of rope and Jason's little prison pedestal, and nobody saw him standing with a giant pipe just slightly to the left of where they were looking. Ooh, nice javelin toss, Jay. I'm actually happy about that. I'm a huge Cronenberg fan of his older stuff, I mean, but he definitely belongs on the other side of the camera. He looks like all of the Ramones squished together with a haircut. Or like Big Bird, with all the yellow sucked right out of him. Get out of here. I love that in movies, the things people say with like their final words. If I was seconds away from dying after just taking a direct blow hard enough to thrust me through a steel door, it wouldn't matter who it was or how pretty they were. The closest you'd get to heroic, selfless statements from me would be frenzied squeal crying and the sound of shit filling my shorts. Yeah, whatever, dude. I'd have latched onto her little power blazer and held her out in front of me like a medieval knight's shield with a girl power crest on the front of it. She's like, what happened? I'd have been all like, you know how you guys called this the Crystal Lake Research Facility? Maybe next time call it the Crystal Lake Big Empty Room with some rope in it and nothing to hide behind. So Jason just lets her wander off in typical Jason fashion, and she leads him into a cryogenic freezing chamber. The wiki description is starting to make a bit more sense now. And she's quick and wily enough to get the big lug into the chamber, but simultaneously stupid enough to press her body right up against the closed door. Given she majored in Jason Voorheesology in college, I'm guessing she's gonna fail her next monthly performance assessment, which, now that I think about it, would probably have taken place about 15-20 feet to the right of where Jason's prison pedestal was, you know, just out there in the open, standing there with her boss, no desks or anything. And that's her trapped inside because, unbeknownst to members of the public, the Crystal Lake Big Empty Room with some rope in it and absolutely nowhere to hide has a procedural freezing chamber that operates on an irreversible, unstoppable timer. Apparently. She definitely should have known that too if she's in charge. And now we know she's frozen to death because they took the color out of her face and her eyes went kind of sleepy, squinty looking. And now I'm guessing we're hundreds of years into the future, and you can tell it's been that long by measuring the length of the Hot Topic home cobweb kit. It's simple, really. See, every inch here represents a decade, according to the store packaging. It's similar to counting the rings on a tree. It's just science. So this group of aesthetically diverse individuals crank open the cryo chamber door, and it's still fully functioning, by the way, even though it's clearly been 41 inches of cobweb. And they also find Rowan on the floor. That's the expert girl who ushered Jason in there in the first place. And despite being frozen dead for that long, apparently the act of them opening the door is endangering her now at a cellular level. But before they did that, she was totally fine. You can't even keep a decent steak in the freezer for 2 months without it ending up tasting like the sleeve of your uncle's jacket. But the complex network of photoreceptors and omocrine cells in her retinas and the billions of neurons in her brain, they're totally dandy as long as you don't open the door. This is starting to feel a little bit like an Alien movie with the female lead being frozen for ages. I think she's the lead. This one throwing out all the information to everybody is either an android or she's on the spectrum. I mean, based on their jackets, you could probably argue they're all on the spectrum, but I wouldn't make that kind of joke here on YouTube. Jason's frozen solid body fell forward, machete still in hand, and took this idiot's arm off clean at the shoulder. You're a murderous rascal, Mr. Voorhees, even when you're not trying to be. So I guess this is Earth after we've ravaged it? Is that the angle here? While the weather outside's apocalyptic. This franchise has come a very long way from mysterious summer camp revenge killings, hasn't it? So Earth's uninhabitable, human beings found a home on a different planet. I'm gonna keep an eye on this movie. It's starting to feel like a bit of a ripoff. Something definitely smells fishy. It's probably just Crystal Lake. So they bring Jason and Rowan back to their space station. Wow. The pilot tells his co-pilot they think there's a possibility they can resuscitate the female. And the co-pilot says,
Female? Yeah.
Resuscitate because she's been dead for centuries? Like a mummy? And this guy's getting a space boner. No way, that guy in charge is Peter Mensa. This would have been at least 2 or 3 years before Leonidas kicked him in the hole in 300. This outer space footage is amazing. Okay, so she is an android, and they're a group of students, possibly with special needs. Alien Resurrection had a female android too, who happens to be the cutest female android in all of the galaxy, for the record. I had posters of Winona on my wall as a kid. I actually did. And I daydream about headbutting Johnny Depp and running off with her. And then she got caught stealing, and for some reason that was like too much for me. And I was like, nah, you can keep her, Johnny Depp. So they CGI the fuck out of that idiot's arm, and that's him right as rain. Just like that. And now we know why they had frozen Jason take his arm off. It's a plot device. And then we're taken into a laboratory, I think, where they're checking Mr. Voorhees' vital signs. And the thawing, decomposing, centuries-old, rotting corpse must be pretty thick with the pheromones because it's making these two frisky. So this girl, Adrian, who I'm assuming is in charge, dismisses them from class and tells them to go sort each other out and come back. If you're into slasher movies, you already know they operate within a given set of parameters. They have characteristics in terms of like the locations, the final girl, and a lot of them feature killers that are driven by revenge and blah blah blah. In this scene, we're watching the sexually active characters allowing their promiscuity to mark them for death later on, just like usual, except instead of it happening in a natural setting like a summer camp or a field party, they've just stuffed it right into a lab, literally leaning up against a cadaver. I do not understand why so many people think this movie is a joke. I almost got through it. And now Adrian's removing Jason's eye? Is that? That reminds me, I haven't had dim sum in a really long time. Look at that! For the girl in charge of all these non-specific, highly invasive medical procedures, that's one hell of a shaky hand she's got there. Perhaps the actors were all out partying the night before? So the futuristic, highly advanced CGI medical magic machine that gave the idiot his arm back is now bringing this Rowan girl completely back to life. And she's looking really good for somebody that's been dead for centuries. Like, she's still got a tan. Personally, I lose my tan in about 8 hours. It all ends up on the floor somehow. And here are some more stellar special effects, folks. So this android girl is their version of Winona Ryder from Alien Resurrection. And the super advanced technology works its magic and Rowan snaps right out of being dead, which is totally Sigourney Weaver in Aliens and Resurrection. So she smacks Professor Meatloaf immediately with some vigor, and that's great news for her health. I was in a coma for 2 weeks when I was 13, and when I came out of it, I walked around like a drunk newborn deer for about a month. But this girl is hardcore, like Captain Marvel hardcore. So they give wannabe Sigourney Weaver the "you've been frozen for 400 years" speech, and she seems pretty cool with it. And if she's not cool with it, her acting face definitely isn't telling us that. So Professor Meatloaf's trying to figure out how to make money off of wannabe Sigourney Weaver being like 455 years old, even though she looks and sounds exactly like everybody on the space station. It's not like they've dug up Encino Man or something. Meanwhile, back in the laboratory, Adrian sat in a very scientific-looking outfit next to some 1970s-looking home yogurt-making machine. And there's some video game graphics on her monitor, and she's doing science-y things and fixing her hair. And Jason's starting to drip. And he's back. I've seen this kill a million times in highlight reels. It is a prime example of some fantastic Jasonry. I mean, all of this is ridiculous, but as soon as your common sense starts asking why the hell they'd have an uncovered sink full of liquid nitrogen in the room, your sense of fun punches your common sense in the face, and you remember it's a Friday the 13th movie. Jason's always got to arm himself, and I was assuming it was going to be something cool, given like this weird spaceship school hotel thing's got like a medical vibe to it. But look at that thing he lifts from the table. Seriously, what the hell kind of medical dilemma would that thing solve? Nurse? Yes, doctor? Hand me the nuclear decapitator, and for God's sakes, don't kill me with it. That absolutely reminds me of my favorite horror movie weapon, Exorcist 3. If you know, you know. Professor Meatloaf does the info dump and tells her they live on a planet called Earth 2 because human beings destroyed Earth 1. So she tells Professor Meatloaf all about Jason Voorhees, and that's the audience all up to speed. Then she freaks out when she realizes they brought Jason onto the ship with her, and they figure out Jason's wandering around the place. So exactly like Alien Resurrection, the scientists brought Sigourney back and the alien, and I'm probably way behind on this one. Obviously I am, given the movie's 20 years old, but this is starting to feel like a complete ripoff. But then the gutting begins, and he starts, of course, with the amorous young couple, and after he sorts the fella out, the girl's completely inconsolable, which is just like this scene.
Oh shit, what the fuck did this?
And everyone's in a panic now about finding the big lug on the ship, which means 500 years from now, they haven't invented motion sensor tracking for the ships, even though we had those in my parents' house when I was like 16. And that was at least 10 years ago. What? Wow, there it is, folks. I retracted my scathing judgment of the special effects and apologize for being unaware of the obvious budgetary constraints, and now we're looking at exactly what $11 million looks like when it comes to building a movie set. I grew up in a big city. You can find stuff like this on every third street corner. I guarantee you they lifted half of this shit from an alley when nobody was looking. So Armless Idiot and whoever the other guy is, sorry, are playing in a simulator, and Jason shows up and kills them in real life. And that kill was totally lame after the nitrogen face one. So Peter Mensa's in charge of some kind of security unit apparently with big space guns and hockey pads, and this is not an Aliens ripoff at all. Nope. The first body they find is named Dallas. Am I missing a joke here?
I hope they know what they're doing.
These guys live for this stuff.
Yeah, okay, sure. And meanwhile, every single person in the crew looks like they should be in a magazine ad for Balenciaga. This guy's got a 6'4" masked, reanimated, angry body towering over him with a wicked gleaming weapon raised above his head, and it takes Peter Mensa shouting at him from across the room to get him the fuck out of his seat. And of course, the space weapons don't work, so they fill up the room with some dry ice for some texture to divert your eyes from the 1980s music video backdrop. And Jason takes out henchman number 4 by shoving him over a railing, and he lands on this hilarious contraption. That was another lame kill. I bet you they blew their budget load on the frozen face kill at the start, which probably cost them about $80, by the way. And back in the control room, wannabe Sigourney's advising Professor Meatloaf to get them out of there, but he insists they know what they're doing. Aliens. Then another henchman drops, and they don't show us anything again. And coming up next, Jason X, the new summer blockbuster murder mystery from James Isaac, filmed exclusively in a winery. So Henchman 6 shoots him to bits, and of course he thinks he's killed him, so he turns his back on him, and Jason cuts him in half, and we don't get to see him do that either. Then Peter Mensa takes a huge CGI spike just under his hockey pads, and I guess that's him done. Again. Then everyone's favorite necrophiliac pilot gets killed, and surprise, surprise, it's done off camera. So the ship crashes into the dock, and there are some spectacular special My apologies, they're trying their hardest. It's like when one of your nephews does a really shitty drawing of you, and you're all like, that's really great, you're so good at this. Jason busts into the control room, and they all run away from him, which seems appropriate, and then Professor Meatloaf gets cornered, and so he offers Jason money. Then he gets killed off camera too, and I'm starting to understand the actual reasons this movie's not done well. It's like one of those after-school specials.
Whoa, 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 you know how to use that thing?
Yep, it's just like riding a bike. Once you learn, you never forget how.
Low budget or not, I am not defending that. I hereby challenge you folks to recall a single time in movie history or in real life you've ever heard anybody use the expression, it's like riding a bike, and then follow up with an explanation of what that expression means. One of the girls, I refuse to find out her name, tries taking off in an escape pod, but she immediately smashes into the ship instead. One of the only times in life you can legitimately claim you had infinite options in terms of where you could have went, and she crashes right back into her own ship. Just as it would appear all is lost for the remaining crew, Android Girl shows up to save the day, and he says he gave her an upload, and I think they meant to say upgrade, but you wouldn't really know for sure with a movie like this, would you? So she shoots 20,000 million space bullets into him, and she takes off his arm and his leg and his head. And then they bring back Peter Mensa somehow? Wait a minute, why am I questioning anything at this point? Which is great and perfect timing, because apparently the ship's hull is going to implode any second now, and I'm sure he could help out with that kind of thing with all those muscles. And then Jason starts regenerating. I did mention earlier he's missing an arm and a leg and a head, right? And so the futuristic CGI magic medical machine brings him back to life, and it makes him 10 times the Jason he was previously. Hence, Jason X, which is exactly what happened with the Xenomorph in Alien Resurrection. I despise the word xenomorph. I've always hated it. Perhaps I'm xenomorphobic. Now all I have to do is wait for the complaints to start rolling in from those people about my obvious hatred for evil space creatures that are trying to get me dead. Get me dead? Trying to get me dead. That's a new expression. You feel free to use it at home. So Android Girl has a go, but she's no match for Jason X now, who, as a half-cybernetic organism, still walks slowly whilst in pursuit of his victims. Way to keep it old school while simultaneously modernizing things. So Jason X punches a hole in the ship, which depressurizes everything inside, and this also seems very familiar to me. And this chick gets sucked through the hole. But all's not lost. Apparently, there's a rescue ship outside to save them. Isn't that the guy that fought Smeagol for the One Ring? So they come up with a stall tactic, and they simulate the Crystal Lake environment to distract Jason while they're trying to get to the other ship. By now, you might be surprised to find out Sigourney Weaver actually distracted the xenomorph in a similar fashion at the same point in the movie, in Resurrection. So Jason beats each of the virtual girls to death with the other girl. Not bad. But the novelty wears off as soon as he's done, and Jason comes after the crew again. The final fight's between Peter Mensa and Jason, and they fly off into space, punching each other in the face and burning up on re-entry back to Earth or something, which also happened at the end of an Alien movie. And there you have it, folks, the plot to Jason X, and I legitimately don't know what to make of this movie. It's blatantly stealing from all kinds of other great films, but it's not doing it in like a hat tip respectful sort of way. Either way, I won't be watching it again, and this is by no means an insult to Canada. Toronto, you are not the problem. The writers, directors, producers, and actors are the problem, and yes, the majority of them are Canadian, but that's neither here nor there. Until next time, folks.
It's me, Johnny, from that video you just loved, and I know you loved it because you're still here, and seeing as you are still here, you should probably go down there and smash me in the face to subscribe, and seeing as you just smashed me in the face, you should probably do something nice to make up for it, like maybe watching this next video. Do it!